For now, I would like to introduce our next speaker. That's Sikko Zoer, supply chain executive at Medtronic, and he will explain what Medtronic has been doing in the last year. Sikko, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Martijn, for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and I must say I'm also really excited because this is all about innovation. As Martijn this morning said also, it's about innovation and also imagining what is possible. And when I look at the presentations of the scale-ups and the startups, it's really amazing to see. And I must say it's close to Medtronic also. I will come back to that later on, but Medtronic is a company that started as a small startup and is now the leader in medical technology globally. What I want to talk about today is about transformation. We heard a lot about change, transformation in today's presentations, and what we strive to do within Medtronic is also drive radical transformation as a company, but also within supply chain through creating radical transparency. And through radical transparency, you will drive also performance, which is actually in the end, the outcome that you're looking for. So now I'm going to try the clicker, which is a little bit of a challenge I discovered today. And yesterday, actually, which is funny, I sent a new slide deck to the organization over here because there were, in my opinion, some annoying slide transitions in it, automated, which I, in hindsight, maybe should have kept in. So let's see how this works today. So let me start with introducing Medtronic shortly. As I mentioned before, we are the world-leading medical technology company with a mission. And the mission is all around, us people and more specifically patients. And our mission is really to elevate pain, restore health, and extend life. And we do that globally. We're active in over 150 countries over the globe. And, to give you an idea, in the last fiscal year, fiscal 20, that we closed officially, we improved the lives of 72 million people across the globe. So, that's a huge responsibility. What I mentioned before also is that Medtronic started as a startup. Our founder basically was the one who invented the implantable pacemaker. And you see that also back in our spend in terms of innovation. 2.3 billion of spend in research and development every year against 29 billion of revenue, which shows you how important innovation for Medtronic is. And it's also reflected because when you look at it, 12.5% of our total number of employees globally is actually directly involved in innovation and technology development. So highly innovative and really human-centric, everything centered around the patient. And now we have the clicker. Oh, there it is. What we do is we treat conditions. So, I talked about the pacemaker. If you have if you're a heart patient and you get a pacemaker, we can't cure you, but we can treat the symptoms. And that's what we do. We do that for over 70 conditions across the whole human body. And in the end, we are addressing chronic conditions. And at the same time, we're also really active in providing healthcare solutions. So solutions to hospitals that help them to treat patients better. I mentioned before, this is all about humans, it's all about us. And that comes with a high level of accountability. And when you look at, last year, it was clear that, this accountability drove also a lot of responsibility for us in terms of the global pandemic. And a lot has been said about it, but it's amazing to see how COVID-19 developed only in 6 weeks from something which was an international concern to global pandemic. And the speed in which this hit us, all of us, was unprecedented, and I think nobody was ready for this. And also Medtronic was not ready. So we also said, we need to change. And we need to make breakthroughs and create breakthroughs in the way we operate as a company, but also operate as a supply chain organization, not in months or years, but basically in weeks and days. So, the virus was a catalyst for change. And, You know, there were many examples. So before I dive into supply chain and what it meant for supply chain, for example, we are one of those producers, one of the manufacturers of ventilators. And 1 year ago, ventilators were a challenge. And when you look now what's going on in India, Nepal, etc., it's still a challenge. You know, how do you get those ventilators into those markets directly close to the hospitals and the patients? And for us, it was really, we needed to ramp up production dramatically in the first days of the pandemic. And we simply didn't have the scale. And also when you look at the end-to-end supply chain, especially upstream, when I look at supplies, we, for example, didn't have all the components. So we had to think out of the box, and we started a partnership with companies that we never thought we would have partnerships with. Like, you know, well known is our partnership with Tesla, but for example also with SpaceX or with Microsoft, to really overcome the challenges that we had so that we could ramp up quickly the production of ventilators. Another thing that we did, which was unprecedented also for a company like Medtronic, is to open source some of the IP. So the design of one of our most popular portable ventilators was put openly on the internet. And over 200,000 people accessed those design files to produce their own ventilators or to improve maybe the ventilators that they had already had in the portfolio. So, you know, unprecedented and a catalyst for change. And that was also the case for supply chain. You know, and this is what I was afraid of. So what does it mean for supply chain? Also in supply chain, we said, okay, we need to transform, we need to change, we need to create radical transparency. And it was, this morning, Sean talked also about, you know, short-term focus, which creates silos. So we need to drive down, break down silos. We needed to speed up decision-making, get away from risk-averse behaviors, reactive behaviors, all to improve agility. And what we said is, okay, digitization, digital can help us with that. And we basically identified 3 key areas on which we wanted to focus. The first one is the digital twin. Basically the virtual reflection of your physical distribution network. Control tower to better manage and control your distribution networks, your manufacturing networks, and last but definitely not least, integrated business planning, which was mentioned also a couple of times today. But what we did is we looked at this not in isolation from each other, but started to think in terms of an ecosystem, as we call it internally. So a digital ecosystem that basically brings different components together. And again, you know, also this morning was mentioned, it's not about the tools. It's about the business outcomes that you want to realize. And you need to see all of these elements interconnected with each other. You need to look at the relationships so that you really can create a landscape that helps you also to become more competitive, but when you look, for example, at crisis, also to become more agile. And when you look at this picture, there are basically 4 key elements that we looked at. First of all, you know, how do we get better in identifying demand and meet demand-driven needs by improving our capability to sense demand and also to respond to demand. And this is where IBP and SNOE and, for example, also an advanced planning system come into play. But you know, you need also network. You need to have an optimized network, distribution network, manufacturing network. For us in medical devices, sterilization of products is key, a sterilization network. So that's why we decided to accelerate our investments in the digital twin, and really to design and decide on what is the optimal network that we can put in place. And it's all good and nice to have an optimal network, but how do you make sure that we operate also that network in the way it was designed? And that's where a control tower comes in play. So also we're in the process of putting in place a control tower organization, because again, it's not about the tools, it's about the way you apply the tool to really manage and control our distribution networks across the globe. And last but not least, you know, it's in the center of this picture, you see the customer, because it's all, everything we do is centered around the customer, our patient. but also to have a really investment in analytics and insights to really drive meaningful actions within the organization. And I'm not going through all of those elements over here, but what I would like to do is focus on a digital twin and a control tower, but also the governance that we put around all of this, which I believe is also key and an integral part of any ecosystem that you're going to build. So, I'm not going to explain what a digital twin is. I think all of us know what a digital twin is. It's more about, how do you apply this? And I think the way we are doing this, and we're using software from Llamasoft for this, is that we really are one of the early adopters in terms of digital twin technology, where we have that digital representation of our physical manufacturing, by the way, supplier network, manufacturing network, sterilization network, and distribution network in this tool, and we basically enrich that with data and try to understand the data trends that we see in our network, so that we can identify potentials for improvements in the way, our products flow across the globe, which modes we use. Do you use ocean freight, ground, whatever, air freight, and the nodes, the number of touch points you have in your flow. And really understand, where are the potentials, and then make decisions on those potentials, considering some business constraints. So of course, we look at cost, but we look also at sustainability. We look also at business continuity. And in this way, and I think that's the key word over here, prescribe an optimal network for Medtronic. So moving away from, basically responding, moving to becoming really proactive by becoming prescriptive. So that's what we did with Digital Twin, and when you look at what it meant for us during the COVID-19 crisis, it really helped us. It really helped us to understand, what's the best way to respond to changing market dynamics. And historical trends didn't work anymore. We also, as Medtronic, because of our responsibility, decided to continue manufacturing products, although we didn't see demand in our markets. So suddenly you have a lot of excess stock, basically. So how are you going to distribute that excess stock across the globe in the most optimal way? So where do you put your inventory? In which end markets do you put your inventory? How much and when? And what's the best mode? In some cases, like ventilators, when you talk about mode, we put everything on expedited air freight. But we, for example, produce also staplers, surgical staplers. We put those on air freight, or on ocean freight. Typically, we put everything on air freight. We put it on ocean freight because, it kept those products longer on the way so that we didn't have to invest and store those in storage facilities in those end markets. But also, we use the digital twin to adjust our manufacturing volumes across our manufacturing network. So you see, the digital twin is part of a holistic model, but it has also, and it has shown already, the value in the situation of COVID-19. But it's nice to have the digital twin. As I mentioned before, you need also to make sure that when you have designed an optimal network, that you continue to operate that network in the way it was intended. And this is where the control tower really comes in place. And what we do is we constantly, real time, upload information, data coming from, for example, our tracking and tracing platform that we have of InfoNexus as an example to the control tower. We use invoicing data coming from our freight audit and pay system to better understand trends in how we operate the network. Of course, we have our ERP system. So everything, we bring that together in the control tower and also use that to enrich the digital twin. But at the same time, the digital twin is also helping us to enrich the control tower. The same with IBP, demand sensing technology that we implemented, and also an APS that we are in the process of selecting and are going to implement in the next few years. So you see that the digital twin really goes in hand with the control tower, but also initiatives like IBP. I talked also about analytics and insights, and again, I think everybody is, most companies are on this journey to invest in data analytics, etc. What we found out, or what our philosophy is, it's not about, again, the tool. It's not about the number of data scientists that you have or the number of data analysts that you have. It's really important, how do you use that data? And what we saw within Medtronic, that we had loads of reports, we had loads of dashboards, but they were just describing what happened. And what you want to become is really become prescriptive and have that future forward-looking perspective. And it really starts with understanding the process. So what we did last year, I assembled a team of approximately 30 people that are a COE for analytics and insights that sit together with process owners and first start mapping out the process, basically doing mind mapping with process owners, with SMEs, to understand the process, understand, okay, what is the outcome that we expect from that process, and then after that start architecting an environment, and also a design for dashboards and reports. So not start with building tools, but really start understanding with what is the process, and what's the outcome that we're looking for. So we are really moving away from building individual dashboards to really have a business intelligence system, and all in support of those other components that I mentioned. And again, this is in the center of that circle that I showed before. So what is really important is, and this is something that people, I think, forget, at least within Medtronic we forget about that, is that you have the tools. You can think about it in terms of an ecosystem, but what is really, really important is governance. You have many, many people around the organization, especially when you look at your network and how you manage your network. You have many people that make everyday decisions that impact your network, and all with good intent. An inventory planner who says, okay, let's put this product, which we typically ship by ocean freight, let's put it on air freight. Because my lead time is shorter, my inventory goes down, I'm a winner. But is that the best decision for the company? So you need to have, again, a more integral, holistic approach around changes that you do in the network. And we call it G&E, Global Network Enablement. Why the word enablement? People didn't like the word governance in Medtronic, that's why we call it enablement. But basically, we force the whole organization, when they make changes to the network, that it goes through a process in which we funnel ideas and initiatives in such a way that we have controlled changes to the network, so that we can guarantee the value that we want to get out of that individual initiative, or secure the value that was intended to come from the original network design. We do that cross-functionally. This is people from supply chain, people from manufacturing, people from tax, people from legal, finance. So it's really a multifunctional approach where people look at changes and make sure that we make the right decisions around the changes in support of what we do with the control tower and digital twin. And you see that last fiscal year, in the last 6 months of our fiscal year, we already are really successful in terms of that we generated over 15 million of hard P&L savings, and 28 million working capital saving, which is inventory, which is relatively low. But still, it shows that it works. It shows that the ecosystem works, and it shows that, when you put a governance around it, that it works. And this is across manufacturing initiatives. It's around business continuity initiatives, it's cost-saving initiatives, some compliance. We all know about trade wars, how they can impact our supply chain. How do you respond to that in the best and the most optimal way? But also market expansion. Revenue growth, new product launches. What's the best way to launch a product from a supply chain perspective? So really powerful, and again, it's not about the individual elements, it's not about the tools, it's about the whole ecosystem that you develop around your supply chain, and what we call then the digital supply chain ecosystem. So, to close out my presentation, we really think that we are on the path, and let's be clear, we are on a journey over here, to an integrated ecosystem that, shows, and we saw already, the power of digital, which makes us that we can, the work gets easier to be done within Medtronic, but also speed to value. And what do I mean with that is, when you look at a digital twin and connected that with the network enabled that we do, with that connected with the control tower, and that's supported by a strong analytic and insights capability, not only improves the quality, the service quality, lead time, and also total landed cost, but it helps us also to do faster decision making. And we saw that the time to reduce, the time to make decisions was reduced with 33%. So again, what we try to do, our journey is basically to go through a digital ecosystem connected to business outcomes that in the end makes our life much easier, brings the outcomes that we're looking for, and that much faster. Thank you very much.